It was the wrong door. The kind of mistake that ruins your day or, in my case, rewrites your life. I remember the silence first. 100 eyes snapping toward me as I stumbled into a room so polished, so high stakes, felt like walking straight into a movie scene. The men in dark suits, the women with sharp stares, the giant glass table that seemed to stretch forever. And at the head of it all, like a king on his throne, sat Ethan Cole, CEO of Cole Enterprises, Forbes' darling. The man whose face I'd seen 100 times on magazine covers at the grocery store. And me. I was just a 25-year-old nobody who had come here for a part-time job orientation in the office next door. Interesting entrance. Ethan's voice was smooth, cutting through the murmurs. And you are. I could have died right there. But instead, words slipped out of me, shaky and impulsive. Someone who clearly doesn't belong here. A low chuckle spread around the table. Not mocking, more curious. Ethan tilted his head, his eyes narrowing like he was inspecting me, dissecting me, and for reasons I couldn't explain. He didn't ask me to leave. He didn't call security. He just watched me. That was the beginning. I wasn't supposed to matter to a man like Ethan Cole. Our worlds were separated by skyscrapers and power, by wealth and boardrooms I had no map for. Yet, somehow, I became a puzzle piece he decided to pick up instead of throw away. The rest of the executives might have seen me as a mistake, a joke, but Ethan didn't. He leaned back in his chair, fingers tapping lightly against the table, lips curling into something dangerously close to a smile. Sit, he said, motioning toward the empty chair at his right. I froze. My legs screamed at me to run, but the weight of his gaze pinned me down, dragged me across the floor until I sank into that leather chair like I had been meant to be there all along. It was insane. Utterly insane. I didn't belong in his world, but for some reason, he decided to let me inside it. Ethan Cole wasn't a man of coincidences. He was a strategist, a shark, a man who moved entire markets with a signature. So why me? Why let me sit there? Why let me breathe the same air as people who had decades of credentials and millions in investments? Because from that moment, he looked at me differently. Like I wasn't just the boy who walked into the wrong room, but someone who had walked into his life. And too wasn't ready for the way that gaze would unravel me. Later that night, when I replayed everything in my head, my hands trembled as if I was still sitting across from him. I kept thinking about the heat in his eyes, about the way his voice had wrapped around me, low and deliberate. I told myself it was nothing, a misunderstanding. He'd forget about me tomorrow. But I didn't know Ethan Cole. And I didn't know how dangerous it was to be noticed by him. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Be at my office. 10 a.m. Sharp. See. I stared at the text like it was a trap. Which, maybe, it was. But my feet still carried me there. Ethan's office was everything you'd expect from a billionaire, see off floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Minimalist black and white decor. A desk so sleek it could have been a sculpture. But all of that faded when he looked up at me. You showed up, he said simply, as if he'd known I would. I swallowed. You texted me. He smirked. And you came. His words weren't just words. They were chains, binding me tighter than I realized. Mr. Cole. I started, trying to steady my voice. I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. I'm not. You're Noah, aren't you? He interrupted. I froze. He already knew my name. How? I make it my business to know the people who interest me. Interest. That word shouldn't have made my chest tighten. But it did. I wasn't ready for his interest. I wasn't ready for Ethan Cole at all. And yet, somehow, he made me stay. Somehow, he made me a part of his world. A world I had no business belonging to, but one I couldn't seem to escape. Because the more time I spent with him, the more dangerous it became. Not because of who he was, but because of what he made me feel. Because under all that steel and power, Ethan wasn't what I expected. He was sharper. Yes. More ruthless. Yes. But there were cracks. Fleeting, fragile cracks in the armor he wore. And through those cracks, I saw a man who was more than his title, more than his empire. And God help me, I wanted to be the one who reached inside. But when two worlds collide, one built on power, the other on fragility, something always breaks. And the closer I got to Ethan Cole, the more I feared it would be me. That was how it all began. With a wrong door. With a man whose gaze could burn through walls. With a mistake that became the most dangerous choice of my life. And yet, somehow, the most beautiful one too. If I'd had any common sense, I would have walked away. But common sense doesn't stand a chance against a man like Ethan Cole. His eyes gray, stormy, calculating, locked onto me like I was both prey and prize. I couldn't breathe under that gaze. My fingers tightened around the strap of my bag until the leather dug into my palm. "You're quiet," he said. Not what I expected. I frowned. "And what exactly were you expecting from me?" "A man who crashes my meeting and doesn't flinch." His mouth curled into something between a smile and a warning. "You didn't flinch yesterday, Noah." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him I had flinched, that every bone in my body had screamed in terror when I walked into that conference room. But instead, my voice came out steadier than I felt. Maybe I was too shocked to show it. Ethan's smirk deepened, like my honesty was entertainment. He pushed off the desk, closing the distance between us with measured, predatory steps. "Or maybe," he murmured, "you're braver than you think." His words hit deeper than they should have. Brave? No, I wasn't brave. I was lost. And yet, standing there with Ethan Cole, part of me wanted to believe him. "Why am I here?" I asked finally. "Because I told you to be." He said it simply, like it was the most natural answer in the world. "And because you came." That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters. I shook my head, exhaling sharply. "I'm not a game piece for you to move around, Mr. Cole. I have my own life." He raised a brow. "Do you?" The question caught me off guard. Of course I had a life, messy, uncertain, paycheck to paycheck, but it was mine. Still, the way he asked it, low and deliberate, made me wonder if he could see right through me. "Look," I said, softening my tone. "I don't know what you think you saw in me yesterday, but I don't belong in your world. I was in the wrong room. That's it. End of story." Ethan studied me for a long, heavy moment. Then, to my utter frustration, he laughed. Not a mocking laugh, but something quieter, like he'd stumbled onto a secret. "You think you don't belong," he said. "That's interesting." Interesting. Yes, because I decide who belongs in my world. And right now, I want you in it. The finality in his tone left no space for argument. But I wasn't about to surrender. "I don't want to be anyone's pet project," I said firmly. Ethan tilted his head, the corner of his mouth twitching. "You think that's what this is, isn't it?" "No, Noah. His voice dropped lower. More dangerous. This isn't a project. It's a choice. And you should be careful about the choices you make. The room went silent again. So silent I could hear the faint hum of the city through the glass windows. My heart pounded. This man was insane, or maybe I was for still standing there. But for reasons I couldn't explain, I didn't move. Over the next week, Ethan Cole made sure I couldn't escape him. He started small. A text in the morning, coffee. Edit. Don't be late. A driver showing up at my tiny apartment to take me places I hadn't agreed to go. Lunches at restaurants where the napkins were silk and the waiters spoke in accents I couldn't place. At first, I resisted. I told myself I'd go once, then cut ties. But every time, he pulled me in deeper. Because Ethan wasn't just powerful. He was magnetic. The kind of man who could sit in silence and still make you feel like you were in the middle of the most intense conversation of your life. He asked questions no one else ever had. What are you afraid of? Noah. What do you want? Who do you think you're trying to become? And God help me. I answered him. But it wasn't all charming lunches and rooftop views. Ethan had a darkness to him. A sharpness that slipped through when I least expected it. I saw it when his phone rang during dinner one night, and his entire demeanor shifted hard. Cold. Ruthless. His voice was clipped steel as he handled whatever business was on the other line. And when he hung up, the air around him buzzed with something dangerous. I had to remind myself, this was a man who ruled an empire. A man who wasn't afraid to destroy anyone who stood in his way. And yet, when his gaze softened as it fell back on me, I almost forgot. Almost. You're playing with fire. My best friend Alex warned me one night over drinks. I groaned, burying my face in my hands. Don't you think I know that? Then stop. Walk away. I can't. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Alex leaned back, narrowing his eyes. Can't. Or won't. I didn't answer, because deep down, I already knew. One evening, Ethan brought me to a gala. I shouldn't have said yes, but I did. Maybe curiosity, maybe madness. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and people who wore their money like a second skin. I stuck out like a stain in my borrowed suit. But Ethan never left my side. His hand brushed against the small of my back as he guided me through the crowd, sending jolts through my skin. People whispered. I felt their eyes on me, assessing, judging, trying to place who I was. Ethan ignored them all. At one point, a rival executive sneered. Cole, since when do you bring charity cases to these events? My stomach dropped, shame burning my face. But before I could step away, Ethan's arm slid around me, pulling me close. His voice was lethal calm. Since when? He said. Was it your business who matters to me? The man paled, muttered something, and disappeared into the crowd. Ethan's grip on me softened, but he didn't let go. His lips brushed near my ear as he whispered, Never let anyone tell you you don't belong here. Noah. Not when you're beside me. I should have pushed him away. Instead, I leaned closer. But with every moment that tied me to Ethan, the more fragile the ground beneath me became. Because if there's one thing I knew for certain, it was this: men like Ethan Cole didn't keep people like me. And the fall, when it came, would shatter me. They say the higher you climb, the harder you fall. Standing next to Ethan on that rooftop, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was already free-falling. The gala had ended hours ago, but the echoes of that night still burned in my chest. His hand at my back, his voice in my ear, the way people looked at us like we were an enigma or a scandal waiting to happen. I should have gone home. I should have stayed away. Instead, I let him lead me up here, to his private rooftop where the city stretched endlessly beneath us. You hate crowds, he said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I could see it in your eyes. I glanced at him, startled. You noticed that? I notice everything about you, Noah. My chest tightened. He said it so casually, like it was a fact, but the weight of it pressed into me like a promise I didn't dare believe. Ethan, I whispered. Why me? He turned to face me, and for once, the mask slipped. His expression was raw, stripped of the arrogance and control that usually clung to him. Because when you walked into that room, you didn't cower. Everyone else does. Everyone. I shook my head. I wasn't brave. I was terrified. And yet you stayed. His lips curved, but not in a smile. More like a confession. You stayed. And do you know what that did to me? I swallowed hard, my body trembling at the intensity in his tone. I don't think I want to know. He stepped closer, the space between us vanishing. It made me feel alive. The words hit me like a tidal wave. This man, this titan of industry who had everything, was telling me that I made him feel alive. And in that moment, I almost let myself believe it. Almost. But reality clawed its way back. You can't say things like that to me, I said, my voice breaking. Why not? Because I don't belong in your world, Ethan. And one day, you're going to realize that. And when you do, it'll destroy me. He stared at me, silent. The city roared below us, horns and sirens and laughter. But up here it was just us. Two men on the edge of something too big to name. Finally, he said, maybe it will destroy us both. The next weeks were chaos. Ethan's world moved fast, brutal, unforgiving. And somehow, I was in the middle of it. Meetings where people glared at me like I was an intruder. Whispered conversations that stopped the second I entered the room. Tabloid headlines speculating about the mysterious man at Ethan Cole's side. I wanted to disappear, but Ethan wouldn't let me. He called me to his office almost daily. Sometimes we talked about nothing music, books, the kind of childhood memories people don't usually share. Other times, he would sit in silence, just looking at me, like my presence was enough. And sometimes, his hand would brush mine, and I'd forget how to breathe. But the higher I climbed into his world, the more fragile everything felt. It started with small cracks. An assistant who, accidentally, left me off the guest list for a private dinner. A board member who cornered me in a hallway and hissed, "Stay in your lane, kid. Men like you don't last in this circle." And then, the worst of them all, his family. I met them on a Sunday evening. Unplanned. Ethan had invited me to his penthouse for dinner, and I thought it would just be us. But when the elevator doors opened, I walked straight into a storm. His father was there, Richard Cole, the man who had built half the empire Ethan now ruled. His eyes, colder than Ethan's could ever be, scanned me like I was a bug on the floor. "And this is?" Richard asked, his voice sharp. Ethan didn't flinch. "This is Noah. Your assistant." "My choice," Ethan replied. That one word hung in the air like a blade. "My choice." Richard's jaw tightened. His gaze shifted to me. "Do you have any idea what you're doing here, son?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Because the truth was I didn't. Ethan's hand found mine under the table, squeezing, grounding me, but the damage was done. Later that night, after Richard left, I pulled my hand away. This is insane. Ethan, your father hates me. Your world hates me. And I'm not strong enough for this. His eyes flashed with something fierce. Then I'll be strong enough for both of us. You can't protect me from everyone. No, he said, stepping closer. But I can damn well try. And so we kept walking that razor's edge drawn together, torn apart, over and over again. One night, after another brutal confrontation with his board, I snapped. Why do you keep me here? I demanded, pacing his office. Why me? You could have anyone, Ethan. Anyone who actually fits into your world. But you chose the one person who doesn't belong. His jaw clenched. Because you're the only one who makes me feel like I'm not drowning. The words stopped me cold. He looked at me then, eyes raw, stripped bare. Noah, everyone around me wants something. Money, power, influence. But you, when you look at me, you don't see a CEO. You see me. And no one's done that in a very long time. My throat closed. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. You're going to break me, I whispered. His voice cracked. Maybe I already have. That night, we stood too close, breaths mingling, hearts pounding. And for the first time, Ethan's mask shattered completely. He leaned in, so close I could feel the heat of him, the tremble in his breath. His hand hovered near my cheek, hesitant, almost afraid. I should have stopped him. I didn't. I should have kissed him that night. I should have closed the distance and let myself fall. But I didn't. I pulled back, shaking, and whispered, I can't. The look on Ethan's face, the flicker of hurt before he buried it behind steel, haunted me for days. And maybe that's why everything unraveled so quickly after. The press caught wind of us first. It started with blurry photos outside the gala. Then sharper ones of us walking out of his office late at night. Headlines screamed about Ethan Cole's mysterious companion. Some speculated I was a secret business partner. Others claimed I was a scandal waiting to explode. And then came the ugliest whispers: gold digger, social climber, cheap distraction. I tried to ignore it. But when I walked in to work my actual part-time job at the neighboring office, people stared. They whispered. My boss pulled me aside and said, Noah, maybe it's best you take some time off. Which was a polite way of saying, you're trouble now. That night, I stormed into Ethan's office, furious. This is ruining my life. I snapped. People are losing respect for me. Ethan, I can't even keep my job because of you. He leaned back in his chair, unbothered. Then don't work there anymore. I stared at him. Excuse me. I'll find you something else. Something better. You don't need to waste your time in some office when you can. No. My voice cut sharp. That's not your choice. That's not what I want. Ethan stood, his jaw tightening. I'm trying to protect you. By controlling me. By making me dependent on you. My chest heaved. I don't want your money, Ethan. I never did. I just wanted. I stopped myself. But the word hovered in the air anyway. You. His eyes softened for just a fraction of a second, then hardened again. The world won't leave you alone, Noah. They'll keep tearing at you until there's nothing left. Let me shield you. I shook my head, my throat burning. You don't get it. I don't want a shield. I want someone who believes I can stand on my own. We stood there, locked in silence. The storm outside rattling against the windows like it was trying to warn us. Finally, I turned away, Maybe this was a mistake. His voice was low. Dangerous. Say that again. I forced myself to meet his gaze. Even as tears stung my eyes. Maybe walking into that room was the worst mistake of my life. The crack in his expression was subtle. But I saw it. The hurt. The disbelief. The rage he buried under that flawless mask. And I hated myself for being the one to put it there. The days after were unbearable. I stopped answering his calls. I ignored his texts. I told myself I needed distance. Needed to breathe. But the truth was, every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. Every time I heard the city hum outside my window, I thought of his rooftop. Every empty morning felt wrong without his name lighting up my phone. And still, I stayed away. Until the night everything came crashing down. I was walking home from work, what little shifts they still gave Muhen. A black car pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, and Richard Cole's voice slid out, cold and sharp. Get in. I froze. What? Get in, or I'll make this very public. Against my better judgment, I did. The ride was silent until he spoke. You're a liability, Richard said, staring out the window. My son's judgment has always been questionable. But this, you are the worst of his mistakes. My stomach twisted. I didn't ask for any of this. No, but you stayed, which makes you dangerous. His eyes cut to me, icy and brutal. Whatever spell you've cast on him ends tonight. You're going to walk away, Noah. For good. I shook my head. I can't. You can. He leaned closer, voice venomous. Because if you don't, I'll destroy you. And I won't stop until your life is nothing but ashes. Jobs, friends, home, I'll take it all. And Ethan won't lift a finger to save you, because he knows I can ruin him too. My chest tightened like it was caving in. This man wasn't bluffing. He had the power, the resources, the cruelty to do exactly what he promised. And Wursa was right. Ethan wouldn't fight him, because fighting Richard meant risking everything he'd built. And I couldn't be the reason Ethan lost everything. So I did the only thing I could. I broke him. The next evening, I walked into Ethan's office. He looked up from his desk, relief flashing across his face. Noah, finally. I'm leaving, I said flatly. The words hit the air like glass shattering. What? I'm done, Ethan. Whatever this was, it's over. His brows furrowed. He came around the desk, his hands gripping my shoulders. No, don't do this. Tell me what's going on. Did someone? Pulled away, forcing my voice to stay steady. It's me. I can't do this anymore. I don't want you. I never did. The lie tasted like poison. His face froze, his grip loosening. You don't mean that. I do. I forced the words out, each one a knife in my throat. You're not worth the destruction of my life. For the first time, Ethan looked, lost. His voice dropped, barely a whisper. After everything, you're just walking away. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms to keep from reaching for him. Goodbye, Ethan. And then I walked out. The elevator ride down was the longest of my life. Each floor that passed felt like another piece of me breaking off. By the time the doors opened to the lobby, I wasn't Noah anymore. I was just empty. And somewhere high above, Ethan Cole, the man who had pulled me into his world, who had made me feel alive, was standing alone, believing I'd never wanted him at all. Alex had never known silence could be this loud. Not the silence of an empty room, but the silence between two hearts that had spoken too much, confessed too much, and now trembled at the weight of their own honesty. Ethan stood there, just inches away, his breath uneven. The man who once looked untouchable, who had wrapped himself in walls of glass and steel, now looked breakable in front of him. "You don't have to keep saving me, Alex," Ethan whispered, his voice rough. "Just stay." The words clung to the air like something holy. Alex swallowed hard, his chest tightening. All the weeks of misunderstanding, the late-night meetings, the stolen glance had all led here. "I was never saving you," Alex said softly. "I was just trying to find my place. But maybe my place was always next to you." Ethan let out a sharp exhale, as if something inside him finally cracked. He reached up, hesitant at first, but then his hand cupped Alex's cheek. Warm, steady, desperate. Alex leaned into it without thinking. For once, the city outside wasn't moving too fast. The noise, the pressure, the deadlines, all of it blurred into nothing. It was just them. "I'm terrified," Ethan admitted, his forehead touching Alex's now. "Because if I lose you, it won't be like losing a deal or a company. It'll be like losing myself." Alex's lips trembled into a smile. "Then don't lose me." The kiss that followed was nothing like the cliché Alex once mocked in movies. It wasn't soft, nor was it rush. It was necessary. Urgent. A collision of everything they'd buried, everything they'd feared, everything they had denied themselves for too long. By the time they pulled away, both were breathless. Alex laughed weakly, his voice cracking with the sound of someone who couldn't believe happiness could be real. "Do you even realize," Alex teased, "that this all started because I walked into the wrong damn room?" Ethan's laugh was low, raw, but so full of life it made Alex's heart ache. "Best mistake of my life." Weeks later, the conference that had once seemed like a disaster now felt like the prologue of something greater. Alex walked through the office not as an outsider anymore, but as someone who belonged. His role wasn't about status or position, it was about being the anchor to the man who had once ruled skyscrapers but had been drowning inside them. Ethan still carried his armor when he had sharp words, commanding presence, but Alex had learned to see through it. And every time Ethan's hand found his beneath the table, every time their eyes met across a crowded room, Alex was reminded that even CEOs could fall, not into ruin, but into love. One evening, as they stood again by the wide glass window, the same golden light painting their skin, Ethan whispered, "Do you regret it? That wrong turn?" Alex squeezed his hand, smiling. "Not for a second." And in that moment, the city, the world, the noisy, it all felt right. Not because fate had been kind, but because two people had dared to fight against everything that told them they couldn't belong together. And they chose love anyway. The wrong door had led to the right forever. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.